Brighton District City Councilor. Today is Monday, May 22nd. We are here with the great folks from our Boston Public Library system. I'd like to remind folks that this hearing is being recorded and broadcast live on both RCN Channel 82 and Comcast Channel 8. I'd like to remind folks in the chamber to silence any electronic devices. At the conclusion of the library department's presentation and questions from my colleagues, we will take public testimony. We have a sign-in sheet to my left by the door. We ask that you state your name, address, and any affiliation. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we are here to review the Boston Public Library FY18 budget as they pertain to dockets 0536 through 0538. Orders for the fiscal year 18 operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations, annual appropriation for the school department, and appropriation for other post-employment benefits. Dockets 0539 through 0543, capital budget appropriations, including loan orders and lease and purchase agreements. I'd like to introduce my colleagues in order of their arrival. To my left is my friend from South Boston, at-large City Councilor Michael Flaherty. To my right, my other friend from Dorchester, City Councilor at-large Anissa Sabi George. To my far left, Councilor Tim McCarthy, District 5, and Councilor Matt O'Malley, District 6. Thank you. And with that, I want to welcome you, David, and your team, for your opening remarks.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the City Council, Ways and Means Committee, and other City Councillors. I'd like to introduce my colleagues to start with. I'm joined here by the Chief Financial Officer, Ellen Donaghy, Director of Library Services to my left, Michael Colford, and Director of Operations to my far right, Eamon Shelton. This is my first appearance since my official appointment as President of the Boston Public Library. It was my privilege to accept that appointment and begin service July 14th, 2016. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to serve the people of Boston, Massachusetts, and beyond, and remain cognizant that much of what we do and do going forward builds on the shoulders of those who came before us. There are two public highlights of the last 12 months that I would like to cite in my opening comments. These bookend this first year of administration. Early in the year, the reopening of Phase 2 of the Central Library renovation last July, and then just this past weekend, the reopening of the Jamaica Plain Branch Library. Two projects that began under previous administrations, but were fully funded under the current mayor, budgets approved by City Council, and for which our team had both the opportunity and responsibility of driving them across the finish line, and they now serve as the foundation for years of service to the community to come. They represent the best and the strength of a system with a renewed central library and a renewed branch system. Overall, the year was a year of challenge and opportunity, a year of listening, and a year of continued change. I'm grateful for the support of our Board of Trustees, the Mayor, the staff of the library, and the community, and look forward to facing the existing and new opportunities and challenges of the year and years ahead. In particular, we won awards for both the Central Library renovation and for the East Boston Branch Library from the American Library Association and the American Institute of Architects. These together really illustrate that the future of the BPL is as strong as it was in 1848, and that this is the standard we have to hold the entire institution to going forward. In your packets, you have a document which amounts to almost 20 pages, documenting a wide range of accomplishments over fiscal year 17, and illustrates high-level goals for the fiscal year that is upcoming. I want to make a few remarks, which I run the risk of highlighting some things and leaving others of importance out. However, we can report on significant capital project progress, and we look forward to continuing that progress in the year ahead as we moved from a capital budget that has an outlook over the next 5 years of $90 million to almost $125 million if approved. We have achieved additionally significant stewardship responsibility progress across our prints department, rare books and manuscripts departments, and with respect to architectural drawings in particular. There's been an incredible first year of system-wide exhibitions and programming, with 12,000 programs individually offered system-wide. This is a system where reading and literacy remain at the core, whether it's from the numerous story times at branches, the homework help and summer reading program, to community-specific book lists such as Black Is, Latino Life, and the forthcoming We Are Pride, just to name a few. Across the branch systems, whether it's the Fields Corner Vietnamese Parent-Child Group, Grove Hall's Operation Lipstick program, or the Race and Inclusion Committee programming at the Roslyn branch, our branch staff and friends groups coordinated and supported another year of robust programs, which it's impossible to do justice to in this brief summary. Additionally, progress continues on the digital front, with highlights being having circulated over 1.3 million ebooks and e-audiobooks in 2016, and this demand continues. We also remain grateful for the support of donors, whether direct to the library, through the foundation, the associates, the citywide and local friends groups, as well as through supporters of the MAP Center. The budget before you is a strong budget for libraries, with approximately 4% increase in the operating budget, and possibly the largest five-year capital budget in decades, with approximately a $14 million commitment in FY18 and a total five-year plan summing to nearly $125 million, spread across a central library, the branch systems, and collections improvements. The operating highlights for the year ahead include allocations for security, for new services in Chinatown, for facilities personnel, an increase to our collections or book budget, and a reallocation of critical repair and a number of reclassifications to improve transparency and management going forward. Capital projects that will see activity in the upcoming year include Parker Hill, Dudley, Adam Street, Roslindale, and of course Chinatown, as well as smaller improvement projects at the South End, West Roxbury, South Boston, and Lower Mills branches. The biggest project at the Central Library in the next phase is a renovation of the rare books and manuscripts department spaces, as well as some infrastructure projects. And with that, we look forward to your questions either on the operating or capital budget.
Thank you very much. Let me acknowledge that we've been joined by my friend from Dorchester, at-large City Councilor Ayanna Presley, and our council president from Roslindale, Councilor Michelle Wu. I want to thank you again, your team. Let me first acknowledge all the people in the field that provide the services every day, particularly in my district, between the Faneuil branch, the Alston-Honan branch, as well as the Brighton branch, and the friends that work so hard in those different libraries to enhance all the programming that we provide through the city. So I'm looking at the budget, and I'm seeing you have probably one of the as far as percentage goes, higher percentage at 4.43 for your department. And I'm looking at you have a 7.67 increase percent in administration, but a significant decrease in the research services. Could you kind of give us the overview of what's going on there?
Sure. The administration, community branches, and research is a function of our outdated org structure. So with David's assuming the presidency this year, he's undergoing an org structure change. We had wanted to make some changes to that this year, but there are still some things. When we go ahead and make those changes, we'll need to go back and reclassify 4 years of spending. So we want to be careful about that and make sure we get it right the first time. I would say I think you'll always see administration a little higher because we leave security guard costs in there, and I think we have a $237,000 increase in security costs. That'll go to branches and to central, but it won't show up in the branches or central line. It'll show up in administration. The same is true for utilities. The city budgets utilities at the aggregate level, so that'll always show up. And with about $3.4 million, that's always going to inflate that line a little bit.
Okay. So there personnel, no layoffs or?
Absolutely not.
reassignments or anything?
No, we're actually seeing an increase projected in personnel for the coming year, particularly with the addition of the Chinatown temporary services in Chinatown. So that will be a staffed operation, and those are net new positions, including one additional headcount for the facilities department at the Central Library.
Okay. I need to just read this into the record from one of our colleagues. Dear colleagues, regrettably, I am unable to attend today's hearing regarding I'm sorry, this is the wrong hearing. This is for later.
Thank God for that.
Never mind. Never mind.
Apologizes for not being
She's
here.
not being here. So this Andrea Campbell may not be attending this hearing, but she's definitely not coming to the afternoon hearing. So let me resume again. Just to be a little parochial, I've been working with Eamon for a couple of years now, and could you give me an overview of what the timeline may look like now for the improvements at the Honan Library in particular, and then maybe even talk about where Faneuil Library is in the queue? That would be helpful too.
Absolutely. Hello, all. My name is Eamon Shelton, Director of Operations. So the first item is the Honan Alston Library. So for those that don't know, we're going to be improving the exterior, so refinishing the exterior, sanding it, and cleaning it up. We have a contractor on board now, and we really are just waiting for the weather to turn. So we're looking for some consistent weather above 60 degrees. And so I expect them to start and mobilize within the next couple of weeks, and then it's about a month-long project. So during the summer, the project will be started and completed over at Honan Alston.
Great, thanks.
And then with regard to the Faneuil branch, as you know, we completed the programming study in 2015. And so currently we have the Faneuil branch with a full allocation for the recommended approach from the programming study. And currently that's slated to start design in FY19, so which is next fiscal year.
Great. And I want to thank you, Eamon, Priscilla, I see, and all the other folks that worked with, particularly the task force that was mainly made up of the Friends of the Faneuil Library to get this exciting project going in the next fiscal year. I appreciate it. Let me now recognize Councilor Michael Flaherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great to see you, President David Leonard. Congratulations. Probably the first official go-around. Last time, I think you got the permanency right in the middle.
Yeah, it was interim at the last opportunity to be here.
Doing a great job and very responsive to me and my staff anytime we've called on library issues. And it was very exciting to be there with my colleagues this weekend. Councilor Matt O'Malley's district, Councilor Ayanna Presley was there, as well as the mayor and other elected leaders. So I realized I was there 14 years ago, at least on this body, scratching and clawing to get funds for the renovation. To finally see it to come to fruition was exciting, and it was a packed house.
It was a great day, and both the staff and the community seemed to really enjoy the event.
Right, and very similar efforts were made at the same time. Just as former City Councilor Jim Kelly had taken ill, I led the effort at the time to secure funds for the Chinatown Library. You had mentioned the Chinatown Library. And the funds at that time were secured for sort of a planning and a study. But as I looked at this year's capital, I really didn't see anything in there with respect to that. So I know that there's either a short-term plan and then there's the long-term plan. My concern is that with respect to the long-term plan, there's no funds in the capital to support that. So again, working with the Chinatown community, just want to get a snapshot from you, sort of what the short-term plan is, but if there's a bigger long-term play there, we have to get something into the capital, and if that's us working together
So I'll talk the long-term plan first, if I may, which is the FY17 budget year that we're just ending, had the allocation for the essentially updated program study. Some people refer to it as a feasibility study,
Yep.
Which is currently underway. So we've held already a series of community meetings with various cohorts for the Chinatown neighborhood over the last couple of weeks. That work is continuing and will wrap up in several months' time. So the budget is there for that to complete. It's just listed as an FY17, not an FY18 expense. Then the results of that study will feed what I would expect would be FY19 and beyond's capital planning conversations about what the right response based upon that. And it's in that context that I think we'll be talking about what are precisely the right services for that neighborhood and for the Chinese American community more generally in Boston. And we would expect once we know what the right services are, then we'll be able to talk about what the right requirements are for space within which to conduct those services.
Okay.
So I don't see us missing a beat on the trajectory that we're on that front,
Right.
but that it is worth noting indeed that the money for the long-term study is in the FY17, FY17, not the FY18 budget.
And that's great to hear that. And on your end, if there's something that we can be doing to work closer together to make sure that the resources are there when the time comes to make sure that to make that a reality for the,
Certainly.
for the great people of Chinatown.
In the meantime, with respect to temporary services, which is what the mayor announced in his State of the City speech this year, a commitment to start operating temporary services in Chinatown before the end of this calendar year. And through partnership with the BPDA, who runs the China Trade Center building, we have an agreement on use of space and a build out for that space, which is projected to be on the 3 to 5 year time frame for operating. So by the end of the year, we should be operating out of that space.
Okay, great. If I could just take you to line 51,51000. It was just indicated that you thought that there'd be an increase in staff. There's a decrease of 272,972. So I guess the question, are positions being eliminated or are they being moved into the operating budget? And I think it was a reference just made a few minutes ago that there was probably going to be need to, I guess, staff up, if you will. And
Sure.
I take the position that, your branch libraries are only as good as the librarians that are assigned to them. I still remember Miss Fleming. She's probably still working for you. I'm not too sure or not, but she was, in a sense, the South Boston Branch Library, and everybody went for her for help and guidance and help with their projects and things like that nature. So
She has retired, but actually attended a program within the last 2 weeks, so is still there in the community.
it's amazing. It's amazing.
So
And
I'm sorry-
seeing
so-
that there's a decrease in the permanent employee line, I know that you said in your comments that there was a reorg since President Leonard had taken over. I don't know if that's reflected
Well,
in
no,
that.
it's less a reorg as David is setting up his own organizational structure. So there's been some changes to who reports to whom and that sort of thing.
Okay.
I'm afraid I'm not certain what you're looking at. When I look at the department history, the mayor's budget, in 5,100 permanent employees, there's a $474,000 increase, of which 211,000 are the, 4.5 new positions, and the balance is regular staffing increases. We're outside of contract, so there's only step increases now. There's no mid-year COLA.
And I'll take it a second look at my numbers.
Okay.
You have contracted services line 52,900. You have that increasing by 901, 439.
52.9, sir, no, is increasing by about 337,000. 52.92, we had, that's going up by 337,000, of which $300,000 is moving the critical repairs over from capital, and there's another $230,000 that is for the security. But as we went through the budget this year, we moved about $240,000 out of that line. We decided it was mischaracterized. So if you looked at the 52.1 and the 54.9, you'd see that those costs went up because we took about $240 out of contracted services. So net of that increase is over $500,000 for critical repair, which again is just moving capital money, and then the real increase of the security cost.
Okay, and I was sort of, I guess, one step either ahead or behind. I was in the external funds budget. So
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
yeah, so that was me.
Sure, we can go to that.
Yeah.
The external funds, I have that right here too. The external funds can be a bit of an estimate sometimes. It's not as long-term, have such a long life as the operating budget. So when we put this year's budget together, we knew the associates was giving us some more money for positions. As we get to the end of the year, we haven't filled those positions yet.
Okay.
So it was really more of an estimate about that. We did hire a new person with associates funding, but we also promoted Jay Michella, the curator in Rare Books, out of associates funding. So we're going to backfill him. Also, Lauren Schott in Rare Books is paid out of that.
Okay.
It took us a little longer just to hire some people. So that was less, that's certainly not a cut. It was just we were a little overly optimistic on how quickly we would fund those
And then
positions.
staying in the external, the reason for the increase in the contractual services, what's,
I'm sorry, I have to find the reason for the contractual services. I think yes, we were just low this year. As we came out of FY16, we had a lot of high costs in FY16 owing to the cleanup of the rare books, the inventory, that sort of thing. So when we put FY17 together, we thought that would be lower this year, and we're actually coming in a little bit higher. The rare books inventory moved from the print to rare books to photographers. We got more money for the associates to do that. We also had a big year last year because we restored the philosophy panel mural at the library. So as we took a deeper dive on it and saw where we were this year, we decided to bring it up for next year.
Okay.
Now, we may be back in a year and say we were overly optimistic and we didn't spend that. We are obviously have a lot of things going on in rare books with the renovation, so that may come down.
great. And then just lastly, you had mentioned security costs have risen. Is that at the mothership downtown, or is that at all the branches?
So
And are we talking
specific
cybersecurity?
to
We
the
talking
external
security,
funds,
security?
specific to external funds, we did pay some of the Johnson security out of external funds last year, not capital. Specific to the increase as events come back, because Johnson was closed, we cut back on external events last year, paid events. As that comes back, anytime we have an event, we pay for security and overtime. But aside from that, so the money that we've gotten as an increase in the city budget for security will be both at the mothership and at the branches, but particular to the external, that would be at Central.
Great.
So I think the net impact from the public's point of view is that we will be able to employ additional security guards at both the central library and in branches, which I think is something that everybody has wanted to see for some time.
Great. We love our libraries. We obviously, they're great resources for our Boston Public Schools as well as our community centers. So just keep up the great work that you're doing there, President Leonard, and look forward to continue working with you and your team.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you very much. You got me. Yeah,
Got
wasn't
it
paying
right this
attention.
time.
Like I was at the library there. I wasn't paying attention. Good afternoon, Mr. President, everybody. I'll start out with Rosendale. Obviously, we're thrilled. It's $6.7 million of the rehab, and I know that the Friends of the Rosendale Library are ready to go. And it's kind of like Christmas coming. Everybody's waiting for the big day to start having the meetings and get the design in. It's long overdue, and we're really happy that the Walsh administration and you are going to steer this ship in the right direction. So we're looking forward to the meetings for certain. The library in Mattapan also, we have a lot of community meetings there, and I just want to tell you, whoever the custodian is there is phenomenal. Place is immaculate, and I don't know his name, and I should. The place is really immaculate. I do have a couple questions about the Hyde Park Library. Actually, a couple little requests and then a question. There's a painting by John Joseph Enneking that was taken down for an Enneking display, and it's a big, heavy one, and they need it put back up. So I was there last week, and the librarian grabbed me, and she's like, "I know the hearing's coming up. Can you throw this out there?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely." Actually, I was contemplating and trying to do it myself, but I could just envision me dropping the painting and not being able to afford to replace it. The one concern I have about is more of a capital thing, or it might not even be a capital, but certainly an operations issue, is when you come into after the main hall and into the main part of the library. There's a very old wooden floor there, and it's pretty beat up. Right. And as somebody who owns a 140-year-old house myself, I'm fearing that the wood is getting to the point where it won't be repairable. Mm-hmm. And I think you can probably sand it and stain it now, and it would be repairable. So if I could just kind of put that bug in your ear, I really notice that we've covered with rugs in the front, but it's going to definitely need to be redone before we lose those floors altogether. And then my last question is about the rentals. We've had a couple events at the Hyde Park Library, and the rent the library is $2,500, which I thought was a tough barrier to entry to a lot of small groups, and it's such a great space to have events. Mm-hmm. So I guess my question really is, where do we get that number from? How do we arrange that, and how can we possibly have maybe even some type of a small waiver fee to smaller groups, like who want to have small events like schools and things like that there?
We'll certainly take your suggestions about the operating improvements. We'll work with the team on how to address those in due course. With respect to the rental procedures and costs, we've actually just started a process to look at the policies and procedures that pertain to rentals of our space and ensure that we are covering the costs appropriately. Whether it's for cleaning, custodial service, security service, or in the event that we need to support the external event with our own events team, ensuring that we have those costs baked in and also understand how to best respond when those requests come from either other city departments or community organizations.
Yeah. I think anytime, and I know you agree, anytime we can get more people to visit our libraries, whether it's there because they're, really there because of the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts or a local school, or they're there to use the facility, it's a great thing because we had an event for the Roosevelt School at the High Park Library, and the place was packed. And I can tell you how many parents had not ever been into that library who are from High Park, and they were just kind of wandering around because it's such a gorgeous library with the old and new. I just wanted to throw.
Yeah, I mean, we will accommodate where we can, but we're not well set up to accommodate events on evenings where we're not open to the public today.
Right. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. I think it's my turn now. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate your time and certainly appreciate some of the conversation so far in your initial presentation referring back to some of the conversations we had last year. The increase in security across the system, we talked a little bit about that last year following up from an audit that was done. Can you talk about the extent of security, whether all the library branches now have security on hand, and talk a little bit about the need and what was recognized through that audit?
All branches do not have security guards, and some have it for peak hours only, not necessarily throughout the day. That continues to be an ongoing conversation between branch management, our head of security, and Eamon Shelton, head of operations, to understand where best to deploy the security guards based upon essentially behavior patterns that we see in the neighborhoods. So we continue to monitor that on an ongoing basis. And with the approval of the budget, hopefully, for next year, we will, as I say, be able to deploy some additional guards across the branches and also at the central library.
Are there any branch libraries that don't have security that would like them?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. We can ask Priscilla Foley, who's here, our Director of Neighborhood Services, to join us if you'd like more information on that question.
We can follow up afterwards.
Great, be happy
on
to do that.
That's fine. Regarding the 4.5 or so new positions, can you talk a little bit about what they are, where they're going, and where the gaps in services are? Because we've received communication both formally and informally about some gaps in services and missing librarians and library support services across the system.
Sure. The 4.5 FTE equivalents, I think, is actually a head count of
It's 5 people, so
5
it is
people,
a
right.
branch librarian, a full-time community librarian, a 50% time community librarian, and a library assistant, and then facility and/or custodial staff.
And where will they be deployed?
Chinatown.
So this is all for Chinatown?
Yeah, there's only one new position not for Chinatown, and that is additional capacity in overseeing the facilities team based at the Central Library.
And are we still using roving specialists to cover vacations and days off? Or
Michael, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, so a couple of years in the budget were added 8 part-time floater librarians. So those are librarians that can work in any location. The benefit of these positions has been it's almost like an unofficial training ground. So many of these people come in as part-time floaters, then move up through the ranks and take permanent positions. That also means we're continuously replenishing the supply. So we're often not at the full 8, but we do have those, and they are very beneficial for covering when there are long-term absences or when there are short-term unexpected absences.
we're hearing, and we've heard it from a number of the branch libraries, that we are really understaffed in some of those places, and as our Boston Public Schools have fewer and fewer library services available for students, I think the system is really relying more and more in our branch libraries to be partners. And yeah, I want to advocate for increasing that workforce so that as kids and families and adults come to use the services, that they've got professionals there to support them in their work. Can you talk a little bit on the capital budget about, it seems that there's a little bit of maybe not a little bit, actually, a substantial decline in capital investment from previous years. So if I could just find.
I think what you're seeing is the completion of the central library renovation, which was effectively a $78 million project, the bulk of the funding for which surfaced in the FY 15, 16, 17 budget years. So as we pivot to projects that are more on the order of $5 to $15 million that are active simultaneously.
No, of course, that makes sense. Thank you for clarifying that for
So
me.
the number of projects is actually going up, not down, even though the total dollar allocation looks like it is taking a decrease.
That makes sense. Sorry, I apologize. It was maybe a silly question, but now I know. Can you talk a little bit about sort of our auditing of our facilities so that as we plan for future capital improvements, in particular handicap accessibility to our branch libraries?
So that is definitely a priority in the choice of remaining branches to renovate. We are still driving off our 2013 survey of branch libraries, and I'm pleased to be able to say that every project or every location that was flagged for major work in that 2013 study, as of this year, now we'll see activity across the system. The JP branch, which we just opened, saw the benefit of not only an elevator to make all of the floors accessible, but an entryway that would be fully accessible, and the addition of assisted hearing technology that is state of the art for all our members of the community really feel good about their space and their library. This is one of the primary drivers for the Faneuil branch that we talked about earlier, which is scheduled for FY19 rather than 18. And the accessibility requirements that, while there are code minimums, we also want to adhere to best practices for libraries that in some cases exceed the code minimums.
And on that Faneuil branch library that's scheduled for FY19, what's the process? What's the real process or the real time to expect for constituents to expect to go from design to completion?
Eamon?
I'm happy to take that one. Yeah. So basically, it won't start until July or sometime after July of FY19. Our design process typically takes about 1 year, and that includes community meetings, input with the staff, and then after that, it's construction. So you're looking at realistically a couple of years, and if you include programming, which we've done, obviously that was the first step already done. That's about another year. So each of these projects kind of really generally are about 3-year projects. And then the construction can take anywhere from 12, 18 to 24 months, depending on the size and scope. So I would say for those constituents, particularly at Faneuil, if we start design in FY19, we would look to start construction in FY20.
I think it's important to say that as often as possible because when we think it's part of the FY19 budget, that's the year it's going to happen. So the more we talk about the true length of time to get from conversation to completed renovation is important. I'll save the rest
Absolutely.
for next round. Thank you.
Great. Counselor O'Malley, I'm sure you have a lot to talk about.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel as though I'm the dog that caught the car. After 6 budget seasons, we've been making this big push. And David, I just wanted to thank you this past Saturday and to be with Councilors Flaherty and Presley and so many others was one of the professional highlights of my life. It is amazing. And to all of my colleagues, I invite you to come to the Jamaica Plain branch, the oldest branch library in America, and a building that didn't have a full renovation since I think it was 1930 or 1960 something, but it had been far too long. And again, want to give credit to a number of people, beginning with Mayor Menino and Amy Ryan, and then passed on to you and Mayor Walsh. It was just a tremendous day. So thank you all. It wasn't easy. It wasn't. It took us a while to get here, but it is fantastic. And thank you to my colleagues as well, who were such a part of it. And as you said, you know, the looping system is something I'm particularly proud of. I had no idea, but two constituents of mine, both are hard of hearing and utilize this technology, talked about it, and this is will be fully looped throughout the entire building, and that's sort of the standard that we will go as we go forward. So thank you for that. We talked a little bit, David, on Saturday. Several wonderful advocates of the library and others had talked about, you know, now that we have this makerspace, this teen center, had talked about staffing, make sure that the staffing levels are met. So can you talk a little bit about how you're going to address that going forward?
Yeah, I'll ask Michael to talk about that in a second, but I think we're very conscious that the opening day is a great event and one to be celebrated. But then the test becomes how we animate these spaces going forward and ensure they have all of the programs, all of the collections, all of the usage that we really want for them.
Well said.
So thank you. To address the staffing concerns, we certainly have seen every time we renovate a branch and have it open to the public that they come and they utilize branch services quite a bit. So for the short term, what we've done, in addition to those 8 part-time floaters I talked about, we have 3 full-time floater librarians. So we have taken 2 of the full-time floater librarians, had them fully trained in the new technology and all the elements of the Jamaica Plain branch, and they will be permanently alternating by week, so that this enables us to open the Jamaica Plain branch on Saturdays for a full 9 to 5 rather than the 9 to 2 hours that it used to have. So that will expand the hours on Saturdays. And then we're also looking, as libraries change, we're always looking at positions when they become vacant. Is this still a position we need? As the flow of work goes from one department to another department or one location to another location, we always reevaluate every position that becomes vacant to see if this would be better suited in another location. So I feel fairly confident that Jamaica Plain will receive a permanent additional staff person sometime in the near future.
Well, thank you. And I also wanted to not only acknowledge our incredible team at the Sedgwick Street branch, but also folks at the Conley Library with Jane Bickford, West Roxbury, and Eggleston, who helped absorb some of the overflow. And speaking of the West Roxbury branch, this Wednesday I will be putting forth a resolution, which I'm hopeful we can suspend rules and pass, naming the community room after Alice Hennessy, an amazing leader in the city, a devoted acolyte of the Boston Public Library, and many of her friends. She was the president of the Friends of the West Roxbury branch and talked about, she passed away last month, and really encapsulating her service. So I saw just through the book that there seems to be a new project at West Roxbury, and it includes remodeling the meeting room. This is the one that I hope to be the Alice Hennessy community room. Can you talk a little bit more about that, Eamon?
Sure. So these projects, this West Roxbury project in particular, is sort of newer for us, where it's really an interior renovation. We have some opportunity to paint carpet, add some power and data where it doesn't currently exist. So they're really like refresh projects. It's like a new opportunity to do projects, get in there quickly, and really make some big impactful improvements.
And these are things we can do for relatively short money. I don't minimize it, but really sort of help transform the experience and bring it up. So that and obviously I know there are efforts underway for Eggleston and Conley as well in that vein. So I'm very, very grateful. I grew up going to the West Roxbury Branch Library as a kid. I am a frequent Connolly Library patron, although I did take out a book from JP Branch on Saturday just because I couldn't help myself. And just value so much the incredible importance that libraries serve in all of our neighborhoods. And I give tremendous credit to all of you, and particularly the men and women who are in the branches at Copley doing the work every day. It is such an important part of our job, one that is often taken for granted, and just to have such a great dedicated team leading and supporting our libraries is just marvelous. So thank you for your great work, and thank you again for all your help with the Jamaica Plain branch. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We've been joined by Councilor Josh Sakem. Let me now recognize Councilor Ayanna Presley.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I echo the sentiments expressed by all my colleagues. Just thank you for your dedication and the role that our libraries play every day in fostering healthier communities. I participated in a wonderful event at the BPL several days ago in partnership with Grub Street. It was a write-in solidarity with the immigrant and refugee community, and the theme for the day was with literature and justice for all, and I couldn't agree more. So Thank you, and to all those who have dedicated careers in the library sciences. I love them all, but I have to just do a special shout out to the children's librarians who I work very closely with for the many story hours that I plan throughout the city. So I just wanted to say that. Most of my questions around timeline for Chinatown were asked and answered, but I did just want to, Councilor McCarthy was speaking about, how incredible the Mattapan Library is. And one of the things I really appreciate about that design is that it has a separate teen space. And this is something that, we know that there's a growing need for. Our libraries are one of the few safe spaces for our young people. We want to make sure that we're not just meeting the needs of those children that are story hour age, but older teens. So when I think about Chinatown and the study phase that we're heading into, what will we do to ensure that Chinatown, and increasingly so more of our libraries, are coming online to be really intergenerational and with a set-aside space specifically for teens?
The conversations so far with the Chinatown community have made a point to highlight that particular need, both to offer programs for those of school age and beyond, and to do so where possible in an intergenerational model.
Okay.
In looking at some statistics that we pulled for the Teen Central space at the Central Library, over the course of a single year, 25,000 teens came through the space. There were 192 programs with nearly 2,000 teen participants in those programs. So there's a model from the learning of the renovated spaces that we do, and I believe we added to the JP branch based upon that experience. Michael?
Yeah, I can address that a little bit. So JP, for the first time, has its own dedicated teen space. Dudley, which has a teen space now, in its renovation is going to have a revitalized, fantastic teen space. The Adams Street branch, which doesn't have a dedicated teen space now, will have a teen space. And in Chinatown, the benefit of doing the long-term study and working on the temporary services at the same time is we're learning so much from the community while we do the long-term study that we can quickly adjust what we're doing for the short-term studies. So we've taken what was always meant to be a children's librarian in Chinatown to expand to be a youth services librarian, which we have in East Boston, which provides programming and services for all children of from birth to teen ages, because we heard so strongly the need for services for teens in that community. So that will certainly be a strong element as we move forward to more permanent services, but even for the temporary.
I'm encouraged to hear that you're looking to scale up and just make sure that access to those programs are equitable throughout the system. So I appreciate that. Could you talk to me about what will happen during the renovation time period for Dudley and Parker Hill, respectively? Will there be temporary spaces? Have you considered or explored the feasibility of pop-up spaces? This is something that we did in Chinatown before, which was very successful. So is that something being considered in that Dudley and Parker Hill will be undergoing renovation at the same time?
So when we close a branch, we always try to and do execute temporary services on a limited basis in the neighborhood, which is what we did for JP and what we did for Brighton when it closed. Those are the two most recent examples of in-place renovations that were happening. What is unique and somewhat unprecedented about the year ahead is that we face two branches going through either repairs or renovation with an overlapping period. So we're being a little more, let's say, aggressive or thoughtful about the types of offerings that we need to offer those communities that are right next to each other. Michael, there's been a couple of ideas surfaced that we're specifically exploring now.
Sure. So there are several things that are fairly easy to do, like we did in Jamaica Plain. If we do story times in nearby community center, or homework help seems to be very important at Parker Hill, for example. We're looking at alternate spaces to do things like that. We're also looking at some of our many partners in the area. So the Roxbury Community College library is a partner to us, and they are also undergoing a renovation for their library, but their library is open to the public, and it's situated directly between both Dudley and Parker Hill. So residents are allowed to change their pickup location for any books they want to pick up to the Roxbury Community College library, and that's open to the public. So we're looking at other partners like that we can provide other services. And then again, because of the unprecedented nature of having two branches in the same neighborhood being shut down for a similar period of time, we are looking to see if there are any other options for providing more temporary services in a certain location.
I like aggressive and thoughtful. I support that approach. Given, why is this unprecedented? So because there is such a great impact to have two closed in this way. Why are we doing that, especially heading into the summer months? And again, these spaces are often the only safe spaces for so many of our youth in particular.
The original plan for the Parker Hill repair, which is in serious need of attention to the envelope, the facade of the building, the original plan was to have that happen during the current fiscal year, FY17. With the level of analysis that was done on the building, the work is needs more attention. But what we did do in recognition of the school year was delay that work by a month until, so it will not close in June, but will close in July. Dudley will stay open till the fall. We will certainly have Dudley once it gets through its current challenge. It's closed for a drain issue right now, but will reopen within a week or two. And it will stay open by plan until the fall, so October, November timeframe, possibly a bit later. Both projects are very important to do, and we'd rather try and speed up Parker Hill and continue to explore the right model of temporary service so that we can continue to serve both of these neighborhoods while both projects get underway.
I'm pleased to hear that, and I hope you'll just continue to work closely. This is rather annoying. I hope you'll continue to work closely with the neighborhood and civic organizations, because sometimes we can make something work on paper that actually does not work and isn't as convenient as you think it is. So while you're looking to cull existing assets to find a way to do this successfully, please do just continue to engage community voice and what would work best for them. And any report back that you can offer on that, I'd appreciate, because we also want to make sure that as you are transitioning services, that we are making sure our constituents know what that plan is and where they can go. So please rely on us in that way. Just a couple of other quick questions, just sticking on Dudley for two more things. Are you all participating in the Percent for Art, the public art program?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. Could you just speak a little to, for local artists, how they might contribute to or compete for that process?
So the Percent for Art is a set aside from the capital budget of the City of Boston for a number of art projects. Not every single capital project will have an art project associated with it. And we've been incredibly lucky to learn that two of the branch renovations will be two of the first projects that will have a Percent for Art allocation. Those being the Jamaica Plain branch that we just opened and the Dudley branch that we are currently in design with. There will be RFPs issued for both of those projects, and they are being run by the Office of Arts and Culture. So Julie Burrows' office is running the process.
Okay, great.
And I can report that for the JP one, which is a little earlier than the Dudley one, there was a community meeting held at Curtis Hall with the community to get the word out and to get some input about the process and timeline. I imagine the same will happen for the Dudley branch.
I'll follow up with Julie. Thank you.
We have had 4 community meetings at Dudley on the design process so far, and there was a briefing at the last meeting on the Percent for Art component of that site project.
Okay. All right. And then I had a question around accessibility. For the central branch, the side, the McKinley incident, so was that a landmark decision? Because it isn't worrisome that we would, for those that have mobility challenges, we should be increasing their access, not limiting it. So why is there only one accessible entrance?
So by code, that is all we're required to do. And we were granted by the Landmarks Commission temporary permission to have a accessible ramp and doorway on the Copley Square side for the duration of the renovation project. Their requirements were that once the project was complete and the entrance on Boylston Street was fully operational, that we would remove the temporary ramp and conditions on the Copley Square side. As a library, we would certainly in the long run prefer to have both entrances fully accessible. We do not have a project active yet to consider improvements on the McKim Copley Square side.
I see. Okay. And I'm sorry for this last question. I'm just curious as to your opinion. This council had debated a couple of years ago mixed use, and I'm just curious about how you feel about the idea of our libraries being mixed use for housing, commercial, education.
I think we're very supportive in principle, and I think it was Councillor Baker who,
Yes.
in particular, had a formal hearing on this process early in this conversation. We're very supportive of continuing to look at what is the right opportunity for mixed use as we look at each renovation project. Not every site, I think, is appropriate, but certainly, there was a model proposed by a third party for the Fields Corner branch as an example that included the potential for housing. And as we get to that project somewhere in the next 5 years, I think actually earlier than
I hope so. Fields Corner, please. Being parochial,
it
living in
needs
Dorchester.
some work.
Okay.
But certainly as we get to those projects which are more suitable for mixed use, we look forward to exploring what the right.
Okay, great. So you haven't closed the door. You're open to it. That's great. Okay,
Um,
thank you, Mr.
absolutely
Chairman.
not.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Zachem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David, good to see you and your crew. I want to always start off by thanking you all for the work you do and just pass on the rave reviews I continue to get about the Central Branch renovation from folks of all ages and backgrounds in the city. I mean, people bringing their small children in there, seniors, young professionals, everyone who's say, I haven't been in the library in years except to vote, and now I'm going over there all the time. So it's really a credit to you and to the city, I think. So glad to have that near my home. There's another branch in my district we've been talking about, Parker Hill, and I want to thank you all for helping to organize and attend a community meeting there just last week. Couple follow-up questions on that. I know we are all working to figure out replacement services at some level during that renovation, as Councilor Presley was talking about. That Dudley also will be closed for much of that. Can anyone talk about what's happened? I know it's only been a week, less than a week, but I know people were doing some outreach about possible space, where we are on that, and then if there's anything that this council can do to help facilitate that.
So I think Michael has talked about the Roxbury Community College opportunity that presents itself as a partial solution to the challenge with Parker Hill's closure. We've also been talking to city colleagues about the community center spaces and other city property. So those conversations need to go a couple of stages further before I can report anything definitive. But that was a very well-attended community meeting, and a lot of great ideas and great input were surfaced. And we've committed to seeing which one of those are viable, which ones can we do, given the limitations that we face. And we, I think, jointly committed to a follow-up community meeting over the next several weeks.
And I think with the July 1 closure, having another meeting before then at some point is important. So obviously want to work to schedule that so folks can get updated and feel that there is an ongoing process here. I will just reiterate whether it's, from an outreach perspective, from coordinating with other city departments, I think this body, through this budget process over the next few weeks, and I certainly would be happy to do whatever I can to facilitate that. I think we heard over the last few weeks how important this branch is to young people. A young lady who attended the meeting with her mother wrote back to me afterwards with some follow-up questions. So, this is folks, I think she was in second or third grade, as far as, seniors in their 70s and 80s who really use that branch as a social center, as a place to go, as a place to use the computer and internet. So I certainly want to make sure whatever we do, we have some substitute space, whether it's in conjunction with other city agencies or other partners in the neighborhood. So, and I think that is my main question today. I do want to thank you, though, for your willingness to engage on that and to change plans as necessary to accommodate the community, and look forward to continuing that work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Counselor Savi George.
Thank you again. So as you know, and we talked a lot about this last year as well, I chair the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery. And last year, we talked about the BPL adding some support staff to really service those clients that are experiencing homelessness and incredibly vulnerable. And how do we look towards ways to connect them with community resources? I'm wondering if what work has sort of happened in that space and how we're supporting those individuals.
So there's been a couple of things that have been going on. We had set up a homelessness committee that was rechristened. I can't remember the new title. I'm sorry. We can get that for you. But they did some extensive work on surveying the staff about seeing the best way they could help support the staff. From that, they put together a few resources for the staff to use. They're called LibGuides, electronic resources that have a lot of information about all the many services available throughout the city. The committee continues to make sure that's always updated. It's also a public-facing page, so anyone from the public can also utilize that, and it's always up to date. They made some recommendations about how we can look toward finding additional support, whether it's a social worker on staff or a contract work to help support the staff. We've been exploring ways to fund something like that. Some other large urban libraries have done similar things. So that we've been really looking to identify funding so we can bring something in. We have not yet been able to do that. And then kind of on another side of things, we are repurposing one of our research librarians to be a health and human services librarian specialist. So this will be a person really not so much to directly work with the homeless or veterans or other groups, but to really be linking our research services and our reference services to other city departments and to developing resources for people who are studying these areas or who are doing work in these areas. So we're taking small steps moving forward, but we hope to do something probably within the next year or so a little bit further.
I would really push and encourage you to move quickly on this. Based on our conversation at this hearing a year ago, I had anticipated that there would be a key person identified as someone who would support your staff in this work as they encounter those that are experiencing homelessness, because it is such a vulnerable population that really does need some specialized services. Also related, not directly, but certainly connected to the conversation, is I'd like to have an understanding of your SHARPS protocol. We had a hearing a number of weeks ago realizing that we have 20,000 improperly discarded SHARPS across the city, that heroin use and opioid use is prevalent in many of our libraries and in the main branch and our neighborhood branches. So if you could speak a little bit to your staff's response, but then also about the training your staff has received on safe disposal practices.
So our facilities department is the team, and specifically the custodians, who are charged with disposing of needles found on library property when they are available. So if they're available, a staff person who discovers an item contacts them. They have the right training and resources to deal with that. In the absence of those personnel being available, the staff contact the appropriate city resource, whether it's the disposal team or or the Public Health Commission as appropriate. And we continue to look at the issues and challenges based upon what we're hearing from our branch staff on a weekly basis. And right now, as recently as last week, participated in a citywide conversation about are we doing the right things? Is there more we could do? And ensuring that we are in sync with what our colleagues at Office of Recovery Services, Public Health Commission, and associated agencies are saying and doing.
So is all library staff trained in appropriate or safe precautions?
I understand that they are. Even if it's the facilities department who actually deals with the particular needle issue itself.
So there is a protocol.
There is a
So I think
protocol.
there's some conversation whether there's a formal protocol on what steps staff takes
no, there
should
is.
they come across
Yep.
the needle. And then can you talk a little bit about, and I know it's unusual probably or unexpected to have this conversation in a BPL hearing, but on the number of overdoses that have occurred in our libraries.
I'm not sure if we have those numbers to date, but there certainly has been a couple. And, again, we work with our city agencies to deal with each of those situations. Certainly, we want staff calling 911 whenever the situation warrants it. And then, working with library management, with the support services to ensure that we deal with any fallout or additional support needed when those tragedies occur.
Yeah, I am, we're just seeing that from our schools to our community centers to, just across the board here at City Hall. We've had Narcan training sessions here for both City Hall staff and also the general public.
Yeah.
I've attended my training. I attended at a branch at Eggleston Square Branch Library. And it's a great resource that Public Health Commission provides. The training is, but it's unfortunately a necessary training for us, both across the private, public sectors.
And we have offered that training to our staff at some locations. We'll continue to do so. Participation in the actual administration is an optional and voluntary on a voluntary basis. But in my experience, having staff simply go through the training provides additional understanding of what some of those challenges that this population in crisis sees.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we talked a little bit about the library security earlier in the conversation and the role that they play, because their awareness is, I think, different than maybe a librarian's, and not that it necessarily should be, but librarians also acting as security or acting as social workers or acting like a number of other different roles is a difficult one to ask librarians. But we all, I think, as a society, need to be aware and also be prepared to respond should an incident occur.
Yeah, we look forward to continuing our efforts on this front because the individuals we're speaking about are our patrons as well, and we want to see them get access to the resources that we have available.
And wherever we can connect them, we should. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think that concludes. Council Presley, do you have anything else?
I'm sorry, yes, just for Dorchester, just sort of rapid fire here. Just wanted to know what's happening for Lower Mills, Phil's Corner, and Adams.
Adams Street just wrapped up its programming study on a full renovation of that branch. So we're reviewing the results of that programming study in order to understand how we go from programming study to design.
Okay.
With respect to Lower Mills, Eamon talked about the West Roxbury interior smaller scale project. Lower Mills is one of the other three, in addition to West Roxbury, locations that is earmarked for some minor interior improvements. In Lower Mills' case, it's focused really on the circulation desk, borrower services entryway area, which we feel could be a better experience for both the staff and for the public.
Great.
And with respect to Fields Corner, that is due to go into programming study to start to understand what are the needs in reality. And to your point earlier, the mixed use question can come up in that context.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And one final thank you, that one of the things I love participating in your branch libraries every year is Countdown to Kindergarten. So thanks for always being a venue for those.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just one final quick question on the trust fund. Was it just a performance issue why there was a 11% cut in the trust fund income? Or
So it's not an 11% cut in trust fund income. We were thinking that we would spend less of it this coming year, again, because some of the inventories are wrapping up. The trust funds are actually doing quite well. The corpus is up to, I think, 57.4 million as of December.
Okay.
So we'll be taking about 2.8 million in distribution this year.
Right.
Not all of which can be spent, of course,
Right.
but the trust funds are in quite good shape.
So for clarification, so the trust fund, you can draw on an amount. Is it just confined to interest income, or is it?
No, the trust funds are invested. We use New England Pension Consultants as our investment advisor, which is the same firm that the city uses. They're across a mix of large cap, large domestic, small cap domestic, index funds, international funds. So we take 5% of the 3-year average. So
Okay.
we look back, and that helps us sort of ride out the waves. If we had taken, for example, before the fiscal crisis, December of 2007, we always do our draw based upon the December 31st balance. If you looked at December 2007, I think the balance was about 54 million. If you looked a year later, it was 39 million.
Wow.
So if we did just that 1 year, we would have gone from about a $2.8 million draw to just a $2 million draw.
Right.
Doing it over a 3-year average meant that we drew 2.7 in 1 year and 2.6. So it really helps us balance it out.
The delta that you're seeing in the years in the budget book really reflect to last year having higher expenditure, and we were luckily able to tap into some unspent balances in order to deal with a couple of crises or unexpected events. So what you're seeing is really more of a correction back to the norm than a cut per se.
Right. And the 54 million or 57 million?
I want to say 57.8, I believe.
57.8. Great. And you're actually rebounding from 2007 low of 39 possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Probably.
It's come
Okay.
back to just about where it was. There's been some fluctuations in the last year, but as most people I think
Pretty
we've seen in our
stable
own
now.
401ks and whatever, the market has come back
Right.
substantially.
Many of those funds are restricted to the special collections area in particular.
Right.
So while it looks like we have discretion, once you look at the restrictions in place, there's not as much discretion as you might think.
There are about 190 trusts. About 80% of them are restricted.
Right. Very, very good. Thank you. Let me call, before I start public testimony, let me note to my colleagues that we received written testimony from Alyssa Cadillac, president of the AFSCME 1526. I will distribute to my colleagues and to the department. And now with that, David Vieira has signed up and Marlene Nienhaus. If you want to come make your way down to the... Thanks, Eamon. Right here, right where Eamon is. Yeah.
Yes, you can. One more. Oh, hold on, let me move this.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, councilors. Good afternoon to my friends from the BPL. My name is David Vieira. I'm the president of the Citywide Friends of the Boston Public Library and have held that position for 14 out of the last 17 years. I first want to say that I have every confidence in the team that runs the library now. And I wish them every success because they have a lot of work that they've done and they have a lot of work they're continuing to do. I do have a couple of major concerns. A couple of weeks ago, President Leonard was at the Dudley Library and he said to the group that was there, "We want you to tell us what you need. We are merely the custodians of your library." So last week, the temporary access ramp on the McKim side of the building in Copley Square was taken away. We all knew it was only temporary. We all knew that once the new building was open, that the temporary ramp would go away. 25 plus years after the Americans with Disability Act was passed, why is this library still having a discussion about why we're only required to have one accessible entrance under code? Boston Public Library in Copley Square is the most used public building in the city, bar none. Not only do our city residents use it regularly, we have tourists coming in, we have babies with strollers. We are one of the premier buildings of the city. There is no reason in the year 2017 that we can't find a smart architect to sit down with the Boston Public Library and the Landmarks Commission and work out a way to put a nice and a pretty ramp on the Copley Square entrance of the building. It's not just about looking pretty, folks. I can get into that building right now without an access ramp. There may be a day that I won't be able to get into the building without an access ramp. My friend John Kelly, who testified several times in trustees' meetings over the years with me, is in a wheelchair. And when John Kelly approached the Boylston Street side of the building, he had to push a doorbell and wait for somebody to let him in. Well, the McKim side is just the same now. People approaching the building from the Back Bay Station end of the street in a wheelchair shouldn't have to come all the way across the plaza, traverse a very busy and complicated sidewalk between Dartmouth Street and Exeter Street, come all the way down to the Boylston Street side of the building, get in, and then if they're using the McKim building, they have to reverse their course inside the building and travel all the way through the building to get to where they want to go. It's 2017, folks. We need to fix this. The other side of the coin is, during the winter months this year, when it was one of those series of really, really cold days, the automatic doors at the Boylston Street side were shut off because the doors opening simultaneously was creating a wind tunnel into the building. So, you know, you have a bunch of bright architects that built it. The building looks great, but if somebody has an access issue and they can't get in, then it's useless. I have a solution. There's two sets of doors there. Turn off the automatic opening of one side, and on the other side, put a simple push plate there so that the doors aren't opening and closing when everybody goes in. Not everybody needs an automatic door. It's a very simple solution. I just don't understand why we're just building to minimum code still in this building after having spent $78 million to make it look good. My last comment is something that you've also heard before, and I will continue to say it. I continue to be opposed to the continued commercialization of our public library. Beer and wine is now being proposed in the Newsfeed Cafe, and they're expanding out to the patio side on the Exeter Street side of the building. We've turned the building into an Apple store with catering and a few books instead of a library providing services. It all looks good and it's pretty, and there's lots of flashing lights and big screens, but if we continue to sacrifice our library space to fund the library operations, we're going the wrong way. In 1848, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the City of Boston made a contract with the people of Boston to fund a municipal library, free and open to the public, not a library where there are money changers in the temple. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone, excuse me, is there anyone else that wishes to testify? Oh.
Hi, good to see you. Hello, everyone. Hello, I'm Marlene Nienhuis of the Friends of the South End Library. And I was just thinking that the first time I was at a library budget meeting was about more than a decade ago, 11 or 12 years ago. This is where I met Don Haber at the time, lobbying to get money for the renovation of the JP branch. The other delegation that was here was from Chinatown. They were doing the same thing, and so was I. So I am thrilled to find myself here at an advanced age, kind of, and the JP Library is open. It's a fantastic library. And the Chinatown Library is on its way as well, about which I'm very pleased. And even the South End branch was able to secure some capital funding for what we hope is the first of a 5-phased renovation plan of the South End branch. I was here last year talking more about these 5 phases, but the first phase is really an important one because the South End branch, reflecting the neighborhood, or a particular part of the neighborhood is really overwhelmed by homeless people and people with addiction and mental health issues who have no other place to go and gather in that very tiny library. It has become really a crisis to manage for the staff. It has prevented a number of South Enders from using the library. They don't feel either safe there or comfortable, particularly when they have children there, and because it's such a cramped space and everything is together. So we are delighted to have gotten the first allocation for this early phase. And I also want to point out that the South End, this plan for the South End branch, may be the first one in the history of the branches in the BPL, in the city of Boston, that have also agreed to raise private funding as part of the renovation. So we're hoping to get close to 200,000. We have committed to raising $50,000 in addition to the 132,000 by October. I can say that we already are close to $20,000, even though we have not even begun to actually organize the group. So we're very hopeful that we will either meet or exceed that. And we're very excited about it, and I thank you for your support, and I hope we can get your continued support for it. And I also want to say that we have had some really excellent and very positive meetings with the staff and the leadership of the BPL. We're very pleased about that, too.
It's great to hear.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And if you have any questions, here I am.
Thank you.
Thanks to you
Okay.
and all the Friends group.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good to see you.
Okay. You're good? Everybody's good? Thank you. President Leonard, Ellen, Michael, Eamon, thank you very much for your testimony today. And that concludes today's hearing on the FY18 Library Department. This hearing's adjourned.